Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight, these are the Rotorua candidates standing on why they should be elected as your next local MP for the next 3 years. But with every election, there's one thing stepping in their way, and that's your vote. Kia ora, good evening, and welcome to tonight's It's in the Ballot show here live from Motion Entertainment in the, shall we say, the electorate capital of Rotorua Electorate, Rotorua. How are our candidates feeling tonight? Okay, and I'd like to also, before we sit there and go, I'd like to introduce to our local question host, Te Kahukura. Yeah, you got microphone?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for stepping in tonight to be our question host. We love locals who have the local knowledge. I mean, you know more about this area than I do. All I know is it has three state highways going through it and a bunch of lakes.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Okay, so let's kick off with Kariana. You will be the first up for your opening statement.
Just tell me when I can start. Oh, kia ora, everybody. I'd like to start with a quote by our leader, Honourable Alfred Ngaro, who says, "Big ships are steered by small rudders." And that way, with MMP, it's the minor parties like New Zealand that keep the bigger parties in check. The second thing I want to say is that the elephant in the room says that a vote for the minor parties is a waste of vote. And I'd like to say to that a vote for family values is never a wasted vote. Kia ora, I'm Kariana Black-Burko, mother of six grandchildren. I've been in education for over 30 years. I've had extensive governance and educational leadership experience. Why would you choose me as your candidate? Because if I was your MP, I would come and listen to you. And if you were on parliamentary grounds and you were having problems and wanted to speak to an MP, I would come out and meet you. Nō reira, kia ora koutou.
Thank you very much there. Next up, Metapeka, your opening statements.
Well, kia ora, good evening. And to those who are watching from afar, tēnā koutou katoa. Rotorua is a good place, but in the recent years, it has had significant impacts to contend with. We should be going from good to great. I have been a local councillor here for 11 years, and on the health board for 12 years. I know our community. And if you are going to be the Member of Parliament for Rotorua, then you must know your community. You must know now that Rotorua is very diverse, and we have some significant social issues. They've been around for a long time. They haven't been addressed, and that is now what our community is asking. If you're going to go from good to great, then we must invest in the people who have invested in Rotorua. And so we really need to know that the best interests of Rotorua will be served by a government that actually wants all New Zealanders to live to their potential. My name is Merepeka Raukawa Tate, and I'm standing for Te Pāti Māori. Kia ora.
Thank you. And next up, Ben, your opening statements.
Kia ora, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you to everyone who's here in person and also watching online. My name is Ben Sanford. I'm the Labour candidate for Rotorua. So I was born and raised here in Rotorua. I think Rotorua is an absolutely amazing place with an enormous amount of potential. And one of the reasons why I'm standing as a candidate for Labour in Rotorua is to realise that potential. So I went through school here in Rotorua. I went to Rotorua Boys High School, went off to university, and I'm a lawyer. So I have a law degree and a BA in geography. I'm also a 3-time Winter Olympian and have been heavily involved in sports governance and governance both here locally and involved in many community organisations and organisations overseas. And there are issues in Rotorua, but we need solutions. We need progressive solutions, and we need to be working to make sure that the people in the community are doing better. I will be a strong advocate for Rotorua and our community and our iwi to make sure that we're moving forward.
Thank you very much. And next up, Martin, your opening statements.
Yes, good evening. My name's Martin Rosebloom, and I'm the ACT Party candidate for the Rotorua Electorate. I was born in Te Puke. It's a great place to be, and it's the horticultural capital of the Rotorua Electorate. Travelling through Rotorua, it's the tourism capital of the Rotorua Electorate, and south into Rotorua, which is the dairy farming sector of the electorate. I'm a past dairy farmer, I'm an engineer, and I currently work in the tertiary education sector as an engineering tutor. I have a large breadth of knowledge which will bring to this electorate. I'm a keen advocate for the farming sector, a very keen advocate for the tertiary education sector. It needs more support. We do not spend enough time and effort training our young people and getting them into work. They need a lot more support than they. A very strong advocate for our industrial base, our engineering sector. It needs more support in the export sector. I'm Martin Rosebloom, your ACT candidate. Please party vote ACT at this election. Thank you.
And thank you, candidates, all for your opening statements. So now let's get to our map here to show where Rotorua voters are based. Okay, so starting from the south, we have the rural town of Rotorua, very known as a shortcut for trucks and that for when they're heading south towards Taupo. And when you head up, there is a multitude of lakes. I know Lake Tarawera is one of them. That's the one that's got the pink and white terraces. Yeah, going through there, and then you've got the big, city of Rotorua, and you've got up on there the other shortcut to Tauranga, known as Nongataha, on the way there. That was my one through known shortcut for going through there, and out towards the east, you've got Lake, Rotoiti, Rotama, which we personally staying at, and was it Rotaihu? Right. Yeah, and then as you head up the electorate, following, you do have a little bit of a swing in for the kiwi fruit capital of Te Puke. And yes, as you see there, there's a lot of lakes there. And thank you for the Electoral Commission for putting a nice, lovely map out there for us to all see. So we're off to the next exciting part, the questions we think you'll be asking after watching today's show. Now, just make sure I get that on there. Question number 1, how comfortable would you be to have your local MP in those sensitive doctor's appointments when it comes to issues like women's contraception? If promising voters that reducing government income by 20% is a good thing, why is it a bad thing in the boardroom of a publicly listed company? And question number 3, with the promise of increased benefit sanctions, will mandatory compensation be written into law when beneficiaries are wrongly or falsely sanctioned? So I hope these are some of the questions we leave you with answering with after tonight's show. So with It's in the Ballot here, for those who are in the audience and those who are at home, we have 28 questions there. We send off the questions to the candidates because we want quality answers. We don't want spending 30 seconds sitting there trying to work them out. So we get them to sit there and get an idea what's in advance. Each candidate has 2 button cards and each candidate has 1 deferred card. The button card is to be used when there is a question that they think that they also want to give an answer to, very useful here, and candidates use it very, very well. And the deferred card is when you have that bit of a hairy curveball question you're not comfortable with answering, but someone can answer it a bit better. And we encourage candidates to do that. So, Te Karakura, are all the boxes sealed?
Yes, all the boxes are sealed.
Okay, let's get, now? Just waiting for my random order list to sit there and kick off. Martin, you're up first. What box number would you like to pick?
Thank you. I'll take box 3.
Oh, box number 3. Number 3. Our letter is C.
Go ahead.
Martin, how are you going to address the cost of living crisis?
Cost of living crisis, it is on everyone's mind. It's one of the things that's actually been told by many voters is their largest problem. We need to get the cost of everything down quite clearly. We've introduced in our, David Seymour's rejinked our budget, and we've introduced a tax cut for everybody. We've reduced the tax barriers from 5 down to 3, which will give the average person on $70,000 a $2,000 tax break at the end of the year. We're also moving towards reducing, mind blank.
You all good there?
No, mind blank, totally gone. No, that's it.
Okay. Next up, question-wise, Kariana, what box number?
I thought I was going to get an opportunity to answer that one, but never mind. I'll have
Button
box
card.
number 8. Thank you.
Number 8.
Down the back.
I'm good at counting.
Oh, I know. That's all right.
Our letter is Y. What is New Zealand's biggest challenge, and what is the key policy your party is using to respond to it?
Okay, so New Zealand's biggest challenge right now comes down to the breakdown of families and the whānau structure and the impacts this has on our children's well-being, socially, mentally, spiritually, and economically. It's a well-known belief that healthy families make for a healthy nation. So our key priority, and it's a key priority of New Zealand's party, is whānau or family. The voice of and values of our families, ensuring that all government decisions regarding families are made with their input and their interest in mind. We are committed to working with families to create pathways for affordable and attainable homes, conflict resolution taught in school and offered to marriage relationships, so what children and parents learn to resolve conflicts in healthy, restorative ways. Kia ora.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Ben, what box number?
I'll take box number 1.
Thank you. Nice and close. Our letter is Q. Ben, to what extent do you consider that public transport policies are incentives to support the use of public transport while also reducing climate change impacts?
Thanks. I think it's a combination of both, as it should be. Like, you want public transport for people to get around. You want to encourage public transport, also because it's good for the environment as well. Hopefully, if we have higher density in our communities and more livable cities, there'll be a bigger uptake of people using public transport. But we need transport options. It's not just about having transport focused on getting around in your car. It's making sure that there is bus transport in bigger cities, that there's trains, that we have interconnections between our cities with viable public transport options. So encouraging people to walk, encouraging people to use transport means that are available to them, like whether that's walking, biking, cars, buses. So making sure that we have a good range of options. And if we do that, then we're also reducing our dependency on petrol vehicles as well.
Just want to ask, will the Rotorua branch line be a plan to reinstate for passenger and freight service then, if that's the case? Because I know it's a bit disused.
It's very disused. And I remember using it when I was about 16 years old, and it took me, I think, 3 hours to get to Hamilton. I'd love to see the branch line reinstated, but I think that's a long way off, and I think there's a huge amount of investment that needs to go into rail before we get rail back to Rotorua. But it would be pretty amazing to see, people in Auckland being able to catch the train down to Rotorua on a Friday night with their mountain bikes and then be able to head back up to Auckland on a Sunday.
Okay, and Meripeka, what box number?
I'll have box number 17.
Our letter is M. Meripeka, if you had been an elected MP at the time of the protest at Parliament regarding the mandates, would you have gone on to the grounds of Parliament to listen and acknowledge the concerns of the people?
I certainly would have gone down onto the grounds of Parliament. They were New Zealanders who were concerned about what was happening in the country. They wanted to make sure that the regulations and conditions that were being put in place were good for everyone. They didn't want to see sectors of New Zealand society demonised because they held a different view. So no, I would definitely have been there. I think what the Speaker of the House did at the time, Trevor Mallard, by really recommending that members of Parliament stay out of contact with New Zealanders in Parliament, on the grounds of Parliament. I think that was a shoddy decision making, and it shouldn't have happened. And I say kia ora to those New Zealanders that went down there.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go through on another round. Meripeka, you get to go. You're at the top of the list this time round.
I'll take number 9, please.
Number 9. W.
Just for the comment that has come through on YouTube at home, our shows are individualised electorates. This is for the Rotorua General Electorate. The Waitariki show is going to be postponed to a future date, just for the comment that has just come through about Rawiri not being here. This one is focused purely on the Rotorua General Electorate.
Meripeka, how effective do you consider the government's actions on youth offending has been?
I don't consider them very effective at all. I think they're reactionary. I think when we look at youth, we fail to understand that our youth do not bring themselves up. They are brought up in families, often living in struggle street. Many have been under the pump for years, those families. And so no wonder we get behavior that we sometimes feel isn't conducive for young people. So let's look at the homes. Let's make sure that our homes, that first of all, families have homes, that they're warm, that children can get to school, that, if there are mental health issues in the home, all of these things are important because our children are being brought up in those homes. So I'm definitely opposed to having children carted off, separated from their families, living with people who are not kin, and then we wonder why they go off the rails. If we say our children are our future, let's invest in our children, not punish them.
Thank you. Ben, what box number?
Let's go with box number 5.
Anything specifically special about that number?
Nothing at all.
Close to me. Our letter is I, and your question is. Apologies.
Do you want me to hit it?
Oh, yes, please. I don't know
Done.
where we've gone. Ben, is government spending on cycling and cycleways a waste of money?
I'm really getting all the transport questions here. So Rotorua is obviously the capital of mountain biking in New Zealand, and I would argue in the world. Like, it's an absolutely incredible place to come. If you're watching, come to Rotorua, come and do some mountain biking. We have the best trails around. This one's, on cycle trails. No, it's not a waste of money. We need, to have good, safe transport options, and having cycleways is a really effective way of making cycling easier and more accessible. It's a great investment into that type of infrastructure to make sure that we're encouraging people, kids to get to school, people to cycle to work. So no, I think that the right cycling infrastructure and doing it well is really important.
Okay, Kariana, what box number?
I think I'll have number 18, please.
The tablet's not working, sorry, but it's letter D.
Letter D. That's fine. I'll control it on my one.
Okay. Will your party review the relationships and sexuality education in primary schools?
Thank you for this question. It's actually been a real pressing issue around the country and people that I've been speaking to. And the simple answer is yes, we will review it, especially for primary school. So RSA, religious, is relationships and sexuality education. So New Zealand stands on the side of biological and scientific reality when it comes to gender, and primary schools are not teaching this. Primary schools should not be exposing our tamariki mokopuna to any sexualizing content at all. So that's our position on that matter. Thank you.
Okay, and Martin, what box number?
We'll go number 17.
Haven't we hit 17?
Yes. Yes, not 17.
15.
Might need to start removing the boxes of that have been taken.
Yes. Our letter is N. John F. Kennedy quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Do you agree with that quote, and why?
Yes, I do agree with that quote. The knowledge to solve all the issues that we can find in our country is in this country. All the sources of knowledge that we need are here. The role of government is to ensure that the services are continued with open discussion to reduce crime, cost of living, and support free and open discussion on co-governance, education, and health and roading infrastructure, and to enact the policies. It's up to the people to decide what are our major problems, and that's what this election is about, putting the problems in front of the candidates for the candidates to discuss, debate. Hopefully the right ones get elected, and the solutions that the public want get solved by the next parliament. Thank you.
I'd like to butt in on that,
Go ahead, you.
just because we have to get rid of some of those. So I also agree with that comment, because as a member of parliament, we are meant to represent the people, we are the people's servants. We're not meant to be there to dictate to other people what to do. So that's my position on that. Thanks.
Not a problem. Okay, now I'll just refresh the list and it'll give me a good new order when it gets there. Okay, it seems to want to be going on a go slow. Yep. Okay. Okay, I've got a DNS server issue. Yay, a lot of fun. That might explain why the tablet suddenly stopped working. Okay. Yeah, let's start off with Martin. What box number?
14 still there?
14 is still here. The letter is A. Over the past few years, New Zealand has suffered from many forms of division. How would your party reconnect people and heal the divide so we are a united country once again?
Yes, we are very divided. We've been separated by several policies that the current government has brought out. One of them is co-governance, and we haven't allowed or been allowed to, as a community, to have a discussion on this. It's been pushed to one side a wee bit. It's even been left out of this campaign to some respects. And I believe New Zealand as a whole are all adults. We can discuss this, we can debate this, and we can all be friends at the end of it. We need to have people in positions of authority, potential candidates that can openly discuss these things freely in a way that does not offend anybody.
Like to button on that one, Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
One that does not offend anybody in any way. And by exposing or talking about all our differences, hopefully we can come together, and as a country, we can all move forward as one united New Zealand. Thank you.
And Mary Picker is using one of her button cards.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I am. New Zealand is not mature enough to have conversations around, who has suffered forms of division. We tend to demonize people who have come from different cultures. Certainly the Māori and Pacifica have been on the receiving end, and we all know that in recent years of racism. We've seen it in this debate. We've seen some of the hoardings that have been vandalized, and it's because people either don't know the history of their country, don't want to entertain that there are people with different views who would like to make sure that their backgrounds are considered in policy development. They also want to have people sitting in Parliament who actually know who they are. So come on, if we're going to have a conversation, be honest enough to say we have to sit together and have that conversation, and earlier rather than later. Thank you.
Can I also button?
Yes, go ahead.
Use raw button on this one. Yeah, I think the question's a little bit misleading. The question is, how would your party reconnect people and heal the divide? So that we're a united country once again. And I think one of the things that we actually need to do is embrace differences. And we need to understand that people come from different backgrounds. And that is one of the beautiful things about New Zealand, is that we're a bicultural, multicultural country. That is what makes us special. And I think understanding those differences, understanding those different perspectives, that will not necessarily bring this utopia of a united people, but hopefully we have empathy for the people around us. We have understanding of the people that are in our communities and our iwi and everyone that makes up this wonderful country. So I think understanding differences, respecting those differences, understanding the hierarchies and the injustices that have occurred. I think one of the things that I look at that will make a huge difference moving forward is the teaching of New Zealand histories in school. Because there is a deep misunderstanding about some of the things that have happened in this country.
And another button?
Yeah, I might as well have a button while everyone's butting in, hey?
Maybe it should have been a hard-hitting question.
Yes. I agree with this question because I've never seen our nation so divided as I've seen it now, for a number of reasons, whether it's medically or racially. We know every election year, if you want to get some extra votes, you just play the Tiriti or Waitangi card, and people are either anti or for it. Sadly, I see most of our nation are for it, and I don't think that's helpful in building a prosperous future for New Zealand. So I'm of dual heritage, both Māori and Pākehā, and our party leader, Alfred Ngaro, behind me here, he is of Cook Islander. So we are at New Zealand are a multicultural party who have a heart for the restoration of our nation. As a nation, we must learn to listen to each other's perspectives and points of view, especially when it's regarding te tiriti, and be able to have courageous, open conversations about what kawinata or covenant relationships look like without being cancelled or called a racist. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Very good to get an answer from everyone there. Okay, so let's get back to our list. And Ben, you get the next box number.
Let's go with unlucky number 13.
Our lucky letter is S. In your opinion, should councils be forced by the Ministry of Health to fluoridate their water supplies?
Yeah, I think this is a health decision, and I think the Ministry of Health is much better placed than local councils to make this decision. So if the Ministry of Health, looking at the research around the world and what our communities need, what is in our water or lacking in our water, the research in New Zealand shows that we do have fluoride deficient water. A lot of countries around the world do have fluoride occurring naturally in their water. And we do see huge oral health issues in this country. So I would defer to the experts, which the Department of Health. I don't think local councils are well placed to make a health decision like that.
Okay, next up, Kariana, what box number?
Pity I couldn't button there because I've wasted all my button cards, but let's go for, what does it go to, 30?
28.
28. Let's do 28. Thanks.
We used to go to 30, but we decided to ditch the booby questions. Considering,
Our letter is H.
Yeah.
Property investors often outbid first home buyers at house auctions. How would you encourage these investors to switch to more productive investments?
Yeah, see, this is another big issue that we're facing as constituents within Rotorua, which is leaving our people homeless. So my answer would be property investors create scarcity by buying up the property market to a point where even our young people can't afford housing. And this is unacceptable. We can discourage them through targeted taxation, and that could deny them a form of investment. But our first priority in Rotorua are our Rotorua constituents, not overseas investors. So kia ora.
Medipeka, what box number?
If number 1, if it's still available.
Now, hasn't someone already taken
Yes,
number
I
one?
think number 1. I didn't know at the start I had to put the boxes down
Oh.
again.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, I've always get people who tend to reuse them where they already know what questions are in them.
I'll have number 9 then, please.
Number 9.
Hasn't that been used? It's been gone as well.
Mine's gone as well. All right. I'll have number 2, please.
Now, I don't think that one's been used.
Letter G. Do you think New Zealand has, I can't read the rest of the question. Coped well with the COVID-19 pandemic? What lessons have we learnt?
Yes, I think New Zealand has coped well. This was an unknown event. It took the world by surprise. I think that for a small country, of course, we're isolated. We're at the bottom of the world, really, and we did the best that we can. We have learnt some lessons, and I think some of those lessons are that earlier on, I think that we should be consulting with the whole community. There are, of course, we listen to the scientists, but there are communities of interest in New Zealand that I think could have looked after their people better than what happened. So I don't believe New Zealanders will respond should this ever, an event such as this ever occur again. I don't believe we will respond in the same manner. I think we have learnt things, but I think there is now a wider opportunity to consult with other people in the community about the conditions that will be put in place should anything like this occur again.
Kariana, what box number?
I just chose a box. Well, let's go for 25.
Our letter is AA. In your opinion, over the past 3 years, what is the worst thing that has happened to New Zealand politically?
I'm still trying to find AA. Right at the back.
Down there,
Okay. Oh, yes, this is a goodie. Thank you. The worst thing that has happened in New Zealand politically has actually been the vaccine mandates. where people lost their jobs, and that created two classes of people. Because, yep, that's exactly what it was. Whānau members were judged, even those within the churches. The whole nation was divided. The residue of this lingers today, where doctors and nurses to this day that did not get the jab, still have not given their jobs back. So one of New Zealand's policies will be to ensure that vaccine mandates are lifted. Thank you.
Okay, Ben, what box number?
Number 6.
Our leader is V.
V for violin, did you say?
Yes, V for violin.
Oh, that's the one there. Yep.
Does your party believe that there should be a policy on the location of alternative energy sources such as solar farms near urban areas?
Yeah, this is one of those questions that's really specific, and I wonder what the questionnaire is trying to get at with this question. So at the moment, if you wanted to put in a solar farm, you would need a resource consent. You'd have to go through that process. The government's also trying to make it easier for offshore wind generation. We know that we need more electricity generation in this country. And we also need more solar on roofs of homes and buildings around the country. I spend quite a bit of time traveling through some positions that I have, and one of the things that strikes me as I travel around Europe is the amount of solar generation that is on farm buildings, is on housing, it's above car parks, and we just don't have that here in New Zealand. And we are, Germany is definitely not more sunny than New Zealand, so we do have a lot of work to catch up in the space and make sure that we have energy independence in New Zealand.
Okay, next up, Medipeka, what box number?
Number 26.
Letter J. The Future of Local Government report says, quote, the current local government funding and finance system is already under pressure and is not sustainable. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
Well, that report is underpinned by opinions from most of the local authorities throughout New Zealand. So it does show that councils are funded and not adequately funded, particularly in relation to infrastructure. So, I mean, the GST content on rates is always paid into central government. And yet everyone knows that infrastructure is a heavy cost on local authorities. I think the whole funding of local councils needs to be actually looked at, because it's not sustainable. Councils are having difficulty all around the country. So I'd like to see the GST component ring fenced for infrastructure, basically the pipes, because that's where the three waters, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And they're in crisis throughout New Zealand now. So better funding for local government, absolutely.
Thank you. Martin, what's your next box number?
Number 16.
Letter L. Do you think New Zealand should investigate having an independent commissioner against corruption, as in New South Wales?
My general answer to that is no, because once we appoint one, everyone will naturally assume that we have corruption. So, no. We need better standards of behaviour from our elected MPs. We need KPIs for our ministerial CEOs, and the tools already exist within our system to monitor where our money goes, who gets it. And frankly, I don't think our national media is doing enough job of critiquing where our money goes and reporting to us, the general public, of what's happening and not happening and who's not doing their job adequately enough in Parliament. Thank you.
Nice, short, sharp, sweet. And I think Penny Bright might have a disagreement and a view there, but that's one of the ones we've kept because that's something she was very big about. You get to go next for the next box number, Martin. What box number would you like?
21.
Letter U.
So you for uniform.
My fiance and I are concerned that we will never be able to afford a property in the electorate where we grew up. What are you doing to make housing in this area affordable and accessible for first home buyers?
Well, there's sort of two parts to this. A is number of houses. New Zealand needs a lot more houses. We need to build more houses, which means freeing up land or getting access to land in some way, shape or form. Rewriting the Resource Management Act and removing the amount of red tape that both developers have to go through, the council has to wade through compliance details, and the general house buyer purchaser has to wade through in order to get a house done, and also actors looking at returning 50% of all the GST on new builds to the council to give the council the funds to put in place all the in-ground infrastructure for us to build a house onto. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Metapeka. What box number?
I'll have 27, please.
Letter R.
So R for Romeo.
What is your party's position on the Resource Management Act reform?
Very necessary, should have been done probably 15 years ago. I do think that we should always be mindful of wherever there's development, there will usually be impacts on the environment. So we've got to make sure that the reforms do not do away with the conditions that were put in place to protect the environment in whatever way, shape or form that was going to happen. I do think, though, that we've got the Resource Management Act should not be used as a method to prevent developers from getting in and building. No, that's not what it should be used for. It should be used to ensure that the environment is conducive to good management in terms of the use of land, waterways, and all of that. But I think it's just long overdue, and it should have been done quite some time ago.
Is there much of that happening in the Rotorua area?
Absolutely, because we've got 14 lakes. We've got some of our we've got geothermal, and of course we've got some of our big land holdings plus forestry. So land management practices are significant here in Rotorua, and particularly for the development of new areas.
Okay, Kariana, what box number?
Let's go for number 10.
Perfect. E.
E for Echo.
The Future of Local Government report says a significant fund is also needed to support climate change adaptation activities. How is your party going to respond to this issue?
Okay, so first I want to say that we are already the most efficient, proficient nation in the world, making up 0.07% of climate emissions. Right now, our people are hurting, so that's where our priorities must be. He aha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata. Right now, it's about people. Let's put our focus on people. Thank you.
I'd like to butt in on this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Our young children are asking all leadership to understand that climate change is going to impact the world that they will inherit in 15, 20 years' time. Had we taken action 2 decades ago even, we would not be in this position. Our children want to be able to swim in the lakes. They want to be able to go into the bush, and everything there is as it should be. Climate change is impacting on us right now, and our young people are marching in the streets. They're taking time off school to send a message to leadership that we need to do something. So, it is something that we have to respond to as soon as possible.
Okay, Ben, what box number?
Box number 11.
AB. Rest homes are losing registered nurses to Te Whatuora as they are unable to match the pay packages. Do you think that the pay packages for all RNs should be equitable across all sectors of healthcare?
Yes, I do think that all registered nurses should be receiving the same pay for the same work that they're doing, and I think we need to acknowledge that the government's actually taking steps in this direction already. 40 million was announced earlier this year to fill that pay gap. 200 million a year from next year is going in to reduce that pay gap as well. So there are steps, that the government is doing to do that. And I think, if we look at other sectors as well, fair pay agreements and pay equity, it's having a really big impact on lifting wages across sectors, which is, important, especially in the economy that we have at the moment. Like, we want people to be able to earn more money for the work that they're doing. So lifting wages, making sure that jobs are secure and people have a strong voice in their workplace is really important.
Okay, and back to you, Ben. What box number?
Do we still have 7?
I believe so.
7.
7. Let's go for it.
Our letter is T.
So T for Tango. Good thing about the phonetic alphabet.
In the 2019 budget, $1.9 billion was allocated to improving mental health services. To what extent do you consider that this has improved our mental health system and made a difference to our country's well-being?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at where we were starting back in 2017, and the mental health system is really having to. That wasn't me. The mental health system is really having to be rebuilt from the ground up. So, obviously you need money to do that, and you don't instantly solve all the issues in this space. We know that there's a real need out there for mental health services. We've seen, I think it's a 28% increase in psychologists in the last 6 years. We've seen health going into schools across the country, so young people can get mental health services when they need it. We've seen more mental health services being delivered in the community, and I think there's over 1 million mental health interactions have taken place in the last 6 years. So we are getting there, but there is still a long way to go.
Can I just butt in there, please? I want to say that $1.9 billion, there's been a significant underspend in that. It hasn't been all used. So, you've got to ask yourself, we've got people lining up because they've got mental health issues, particularly our young people can't get the services that they need. And there's been an underspend. So it's all very well allocating a budget, but it actually needs to get out to the people who really need it.
Okay, and I believe we've got to reissue a button card to every other candidate. Just to make fair's fair. Yep. So yes, as host, I will be reissuing a button card to every other remaining candidate. Okay, Martin, what box number?
17.
17 still there?
Yeah.
19.
19. That works.
B for banana. Do you believe that 16-year-olds have the maturity to vote?
Basically, no. I know this is not going to go down well with the 16 and 17-year-olds, but the voting age used to be 20, and it got reduced to 18 for a bunch of very robust reasons. One of the big ones was we sent young men off to fight at 18, so the argument was made if they were old enough to go and fight and die for the country, they were old enough to vote for our country. At 16, most of our young people are still in school. They haven't learnt what it's like to actually live in the world, receive pay tax, and actually try and balance a budget. Most of them are still living at home. Yes, some of them work after school, but they're not sole wage and salary earners, and I don't think they'll be responsible enough to make decisions about spending hours. So we're going to have non-taxpayer young people voting to spend our taxpayer money. I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, I might do a button there. Thank you. I'll use my card.
You go ahead.
I totally call Martin. I agree with what he says. I love students of every age as a teacher, especially our rangatahi, our youth. And I just don't think at 16 they're in a position for a couple of reasons to make life-changing decisions such as that's going to affect a whole country, even around puberty blockers, that they're trying to give to children under 16. So I don't I don't believe they have the maturity to understand the full implications of that decision. And we must be mindful that we don't know what the teachers are teaching them in schools, who will be very influential on who these 16-year-olds may vote for. So kia ora.
Can I'll use a
Another
button.
button.
We might as well have some diversity in opinion on this one. You know, I'm in favour of 16-year-olds having the vote. There is no maturity tests in coming to vote. So if we're talking about maturity, I'm sure, you know, we all run into people in the community that I have friends that I would say, you know, there's a lot of 16-year-olds that are much more mature than they are. So I don't necessarily think that maturity is how we should be judging voting. We don't have, you know, we have very few limitations on our voting as soon as you are over the age of 18. You know, 16-year-olds, the research shows that if you engage a 16-year-old in the voting process, they will vote, you know, throughout their lifetime, because you're engaging them in an earlier at an earlier time in their life. So it's better for our country if we get people voting earlier. We'll get more people voting. And this is also our future. You know, the children are our future. They should have a say in what that future looks like.
And mentioning something on the voting age, my grandma first voted at the first legal age she could vote at 21, because the voting age in 1949 was 21. And the one thing is, my grandma does remember the election of Iraraka Ratana, which is quite interesting for a non-Māori to remember the election of Iraraka back in 1949. And she does remember the little bit of an upset it made to Parliament history that year. So a little bit of history there on that. And my grandma is now 95 and still kicking well to this day. And unfortunately, she's a little bit not the best on the internet, so she has to get my advice on on how the shows went. But she'll be very pleased with what's happening here, and shall we say, her cousin Joy would be very glad to be enjoying this as someone who's been a Rotorua resident and a voter most of her adult life. Okay, Metapeka, you're up next.
Number 4, please.
Number 4 is X.
So X for X-ray.
Yes. Would you or your party consider giving a fixed percentage of GST tax revenue to help fund local councils on infrastructure projects?
Yes. Yes.
And now,
That was a quick answer.
very, very quick and straight to the point. Kariana, what box number?
I'll go for 22, thank you.
Letter F for fun.
Well, it's a bit different from Foxtrot.
Current information from overseas indicates that vaping is not a healthier alternative to smoking. Children of primary school age are becoming addicted. What is your party's plan to address this health concern?
Yeah, well, this was a tricky one for me to answer, and I totally agree. I see vaping, and I've read that research overseas, and it is very harmful. So I don't know why people have deterred them from smoking vapes and smoking vapes and moving away from cigarettes, which is the worst of the two evils. So actually taxing cigarettes has arguably not been effective either. It's just made people who are addicted to cigarettes just spend more money that they don't usually have. So to deter vaping by making it look uncool, that typically if you use media and just deter them that way, because they are children, they're not 18 years old, they shouldn't be using vapes anyway. Yep.
Just want to ask, and audience might know this, does the rule around growing 15 kgs of tobacco for personal use, is that still allowed? That was the law back in 2012. Does anyone know that?
I'll go out on a limb and say it does.
Does. Okay, well, and probably growing your own tobacco at home is probably a hell of a lot better than buying tailor-mades or pouches off multinational corporates.
Right.
Yeah. Okay,
Agree.
so for our last round, Martin, what box number?
I will take 24, thank you.
Letter Z. Zebra.
Oh, Zulu.
Took a while.
That's all right. I mean, and some random fingers there. All New Zealand planes, their first letter starts with Z.
Well, that's a fun fact.
Yes.
Long-term change requires strong and binding cross-party collaboration and agreement. What is one area that your party could commit to attempting genuine, lasting and binding cross-party work for the long-term benefit of New Zealand?
Right, this is a policy that ACT's had bouncing around for a while, and all of New Zealand has talked about it on and off for quite some time. The ACT party would commit to introducing the 4-year term, but the 4-year term is going to come with a bit of a catch. We're not just going to give any party a free sail into a 4-year term. The catch is going to be that if a party agrees at the beginning of its term that it wants to do 4 years, we'll reform the system in such a way that it is still accountable, and all the select committees, all the chairs of select committees must be handed over to the opposition parties evenly. So therefore, if any law or policy wants to be pushed through, the select committees can really digest it, poke questions and poke holes in it, and hopefully we'll have some robust discussion around it. It's one way of us looking at getting into a 4-year political term, which gives us more time to develop robust policies and hopefully move this country forward.
Now, there was something suggested about having the proportionality to be based on non-executive members. And at the moment, Parliament is made up of nearly 25% of the legislature is executive. Would those select committee makeups be based on a combination of proportionality on only non-executive MPs, or a combination of executive and non-executive MPs?
That part is still up for discussion. It's money the chairmanship has to be basically an opposition MP in charge of the committee. Therefore, things just don't get rammed through it as has happened in the last 3 years.
Okay. Ben, what box number?
23.
O for orange. What is your party's stance on central bank digital currency, and will your party support removing cash from being used in New Zealand?
I think there's a lot of risks with just having a central bank digital currency. So, you know, I don't want to predict the future here, but, you know, obviously cash is reducing in our society. You know, people are using cards, online banking and, you know, online payments, you know, an enormous amount more than they were just a few years ago. So I think the space is moving quickly. But in terms of central bank digital currency, you know, I don't know what the Labour Party position is on that, but my personal position on that would be that you move in that direction, and it's a very high risk direction to move in. So I would, you know, step very carefully.
Yeah, I'll have a button for this one.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. Central bank digital currencies is basically taking away a lot of our own personal freedoms. Our cash at the moment gives us the right to go where we want to and do what we want when we want to do it. If we go to a central bank digital currency, that right will be taken away from us. And that is the part that I'm opposed to. ACT is a party of freedom, business freedom, no restrictions on trade, but this one I think is a step too far. My personal view is it is a very bad idea because it attacks us and how we move and how we do business around our life.
And something about cash is it does help victims of domestic violence, flee their abusers without having them having control of their bank accounts. So that's something that, you know, you see frequently brought up on their cashless society means, you know, denying victims the right to flee domestic violence. Yeah. Okay, Kariana, what box number?
I'll have number 12, please.
Kapai. Leader K.
Okay.
Okay, for Kariana.
How has New Zealand changed since you were a child? Has it changed for the better?
Oh, yes. I think we'll all agree here that New Zealand has changed, but unfortunately not for the better. Yeah, family breakdown is 50% of children living in broken families. Our child poverty is higher than it even was in 2017, and that was before, as I was growing up, we were safe. We could go wandering and do fun things up trees without worrying about stranger danger and all those sorts of things. You could afford houses, like afford deposits. People wanted you to have a house and be independent of the state, and now we've got a system that wants us to be dependent on the state. So has it moved for the good? No, it hasn't. Thank you.
Okay. And lucky last, Metapeka, what box number?
Well, the lucky last 20.
P.
So
What would your party do about
Ooh.
regulating the introduction of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, thank you. I find this very interesting, actually, because when artificial intelligence was being talked about and then it was introduced, everybody thought it was going to be something exciting. It was going to be innovative. It would be used creatively, hopefully for the good of everyone. But now we're seeing there's so much concern rising in this area of artificial intelligence. I think that we don't trust some of the developers. We don't trust what they might be using it for. And so regulation, I think we will have to. I think we should be sharing our knowledge with other countries that have perhaps are a little bit ahead of us in this regard. Share our knowledge and then also look at what the potential danger is, because I see where artists and the creative people now are signaling what they're likely to miss out on. Universities are very concerned about what students will, the work might not even be theirs that they're submitting and going to be assessed on. So I'm just saying that I think we should be thinking in terms of regulation so that we can use it for the best possible results. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's a good end for it. Martin, let's start off with your button.
This is a massive area. It goes along with lots of things that we as humans do. We develop something that we think is going to make our lives better and eventually takes over our lives. And AI right now is at a point where it's coming into our society, like many other things that we've done, cell phones and vaping, and our young people have become addicted to it and losing the ability to do free thinking and occupy their times without their vapor or without their phone. AI is far more advanced than this, and I understand in some areas it's going to be very helpful. In engineering, it's saving lives. It's taking guys away from the coalface and making life more bearable. Autonomous vehicles, I'm still unsure whether it's good or bad, but it's the beginning of AI. But this is artificial intelligence. This is a machine that can, to some extent, think for itself. So the car can detect somebody and drive around them. It can stop. It can control the car for you, which is quite unnerving for some people. Machines, robots doing things for you. Sure, they'll be mundane tasks, but they're going to get better, and we need to put some sort of regulatory process that we can control the development and the education of our young people to absorb the information as it comes online.
Okay, and Ben, your button.
Yeah, I better use my button since we're on the last question. I don't want to let one go to waste. So, you know, AI, there's incredible opportunities with AI, but also with incredible opportunities come incredible risks as well. We are really moving into a space of human development and technology, which, you know, maybe we aren't quite prepared for in some ways. And, you know, I want to pick up on Metapeka's point. I think, you know, we can't just regulate this ourselves. There's no point in New Zealand regulating this without working with our partners around the world. So I think, you know, taking a global approach to this, you know, working with countries around the world to make sure that we do have sensible regulations where they are needed. But at the same time, we need to be able to reap the benefits where we can, whether it's in medicine or healthcare, you know, policing, across the spectrum. There's, you know, I'm an anti-doping, and there's huge benefits for AI and anti-doping in the future, but we need to be cautious here.
Okay, thank you, candidates, and thank you for cleaning out all our questions and giving the voters some very quality answers. We're going to take a break here. You can see some of our previous show highlights. We've just updated the reel with some footage from the Wanganui Electorate show, from the Rangitikei Electorate show, and from the Palmerston North Electorate show that you can watch during this break. And we'll like to give a bit of a reminder of the big reveal from the Riwitaka Electorate. So we'll see you back in about 10 minutes' time for hard-hitting questions.
I'm back again, thank you. And what we want to do here is we want for the candidates to introduce themselves. So do we have a preferred, who should we start off with? I'll tell you what, let's start with, have we got the Prime Minister there anywhere? Let's start with the Prime Minister.
I am not Chris Hipkins. I am at a debate. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
This is Michael Hill. He's not here.
My name's Hector Robertson, and I'm with Vision New Zealand. I'm here.
Hi, I'm Tony Pitteroy, and I'm with New Zealand Party.
Kia ora. I'm Chris Norton, and I'm with the Greens.
I'm not Emma Chatterton, but Emma has, in fact, submitted 2 videos, which we will see later on in the show.
Thank you very much. There you are. There is our list of candidates.
Tom, Kirsten, Hare, Wendy, Cameron, Matthew, Caitlin. Join us 4 p.m. this Friday on the 29th of September for It's in the Ballot, Bay of Plenty Electorate. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram, or on our website at www.itsintheballot.nz. See you then. For the members' bill, so we've asked each of our candidates, you can introduce a members' bill as an MP into the biscuit tin, and it can be drawn out and potentially turned into law. So we've asked them, we're giving them 2 minutes to explain, if they're elected, what would be the first members' bill that they would introduce into Parliament. So we'll go with Bernard first.
All right. By its very nature, a members' bill is therefore is not necessarily party policy, and my members' bill is not party policy. So I'll just make that point first. What I would do is cause alcohol regulation or alcohol to be regulated in the same way that we have recommended that marijuana be regulated. That is, no branding, no advertising, available through government outlets, with limited supply at each purchase. There is a narrative that marijuana is the entry drug to all sorts of dreadful drugs. Not so. Alcohol is the entry drug and does considerably more damage than marijuana does. So I believe should be regulated in the same way. That's my view, not party policy.
Short and to the point. And Helma.
As I talked long enough about the abortion issues, people know my view. What would be my preferred private members' bill if I was elected? But that's not party policy. the private members' bills have to be okayed by, of course, by the party. I have one remit going forward that is not addressed last convention, and that is a remit to solve the housing crisis. In the Netherlands, we had the Premier A scheme for low socioeconomic people, low-income people to buy their own home. It was in the 1970s when a very left-wing MP, Prime Minister, De Nijl, brought that in. It was extremely successful. It solved the housing crisis. Then they stopped it because there were enough homes, and people, then now they want a very right-wing government, want to start this again. And that actually, to me, means that this is a very, very good policy. Premier A scheme to have a house. It is a scheme that has to be quite difficult, but you actually buying a house with a Premier, you cannot resell it for 7 or 8 years. There is a little bit of a stick behind the door that you pay your payments, and after 6 or 7 years, you can buy in the free market and in the free sector, sorry, not free market, free sector, and a new Premier A couple can buy that house of yours. And it really solved the housing crisis. If we can really put whole parliament, put their weight behind it, we actually can solve the housing crisis, and we can bring to young people the hope to own their own home again back to New Zealand.
Erica, Christine, Sam, Leon, Justin, Jan, Jonathan, Chelsea. Join us this Friday, the 29th of September at 7 p.m. for It's in the Ballot, Rotorua Electorate. Join us here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and watch us live at www.it'sintheballot.nz. See you then. Yeah, another phonetic alphabet. How has New Zealand changed since you were a child? Has it changed for the better?
That's a really interesting question.
How long ago was
it? Yeah, 65 years ago. So when I was a child, I actually drove the steam trains on the railway land when the railway was in the middle of Palmerston, and I drove on those steam trains through the middle of Palmerston, and we went out laying gravel because I was with my dad. I was 5 years old with my dad laying gravel on the railway lines through Masterton. So it's changed.
So no internet then?
No internet.
Did you have to ring up the operator and make a phone call?
No telephone. No telephone. We had a telephone box outside our house, and that telephone box, there's a little baby left in there. It was a program the other day on TV1, and that was right outside our place. And that was before I was born. So my mother had 5 daughters, didn't have any sons, so she was thinking of adopting that. But then I came along, so it saved the day, didn't it? Even when I was at university, my first university, I had to do my stats. I had to borrow a calculator because the calculators were like $500 off the office. Yeah, and I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to borrow that off there. I had to use a slide rule to do my calculations, and it took me 3 weeks to do my stats. My second degree, in 1994, when I did my stats, it took me 20 minutes to do the same stats, and I just couldn't believe how much that worked. Now it would take 3 or 4 minutes, bang, it'd be done. It's just incredible how things have moved and how fast things have gone. Yeah, so it's quite amazing.
The bill that I would introduce is extending the time from when candidates are announced to the election from 4 weeks to 9 weeks, because it's just not enough time. And we had evidence of that. I got a call yesterday saying, "Hey, you want to go to candidates meeting?" Okay, or was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, yesterday. So only because Jill just found my name slipping through as a candidate for Umataka. So in local body elections, there's a 9-week time frame, and that gives time for everyone to get prepared and to start moving through the campaign. I'm still trying to get my car sign written, and there's only 3 weeks to the election. Things like that. So it's a simple bill, but it's really is just it's a leftover from first past the post, where the small parties just haven't been taken into account as to giving them enough time to run up to the election. And thank you.
So this evening, we've got a couple of questions that we think that you're going to be asking after this evening's show. The first question, will you be able to afford to spend $300 a week on childcare to get the maximum childcare rebate in a cost of living crisis? Question number 2, is it time for the EQC to expand its scope to include climate change disaster cover? And question number 3, if no cause rental terminations are reinstated in 2026, will Hart South residents have to worry about being evicted for allowing a campaigning politician to use the bathroom in their house if their landlord finds out and does not like that politician? Okay, so questions to think about, people.
Yeah, it felt like an educated one. All right, Geva, it's 18. Okay, so question A, B, better known as Alpha and Bravo. What are you / your party going to do for the climate crisis?
What haven't we done? The Green Party has put the climate change on the agenda in Parliament for 30 years, and for years. And I'm thinking back to the work that Jeanette Fitzsimons did as one of the first co-leaders of the Green Party. It's so important that we address the climate crisis. People in Auckland intimately know this because of the floods from the Auckland Anniversary Weekend, also with what happened up north and also over the hill there in Hastings as well. But we need to do more. We need to make sure that we continue to bring down our emissions. We must mitigate our emissions, but also to support towns and cities to adapt for climate change, to have that climate resilience, and for us to support local councils to do that. And I also think about this in the wider context of where we are in the Pacific. We often say that we are a family of Pacific Islanders. We are doing all of this stuff. We need to think about it as a region as well, and supporting our Pacific Island communities who are on the front lines of climate change.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to It's in the Ballot. Now let's get heading for hard-hitting questions. Okay, so hard-hitting questions are the questions that get answered by all candidates. You cannot use your button cards because you're already going to be answering the question. You cannot defer it to another candidate because you're already going to be answering the questions, and they are questions that are of significance in the community. So let's kick off for hard-hitting question number 1. What is your party's policy to get families out of emergency accommodation and into long-term stable housing? And let's kick off with Merepeka.
Well, emergency housing has brought Rotorua to the attention of this nation over the last few years. So we've got 400 children each day who go to school from emergency housing. But what we should be doing is looking at a long-term solution. Otherwise, we're going to be reactive. We're going to throw people into, again, unsatisfactory housing without understanding that it is a long-term solution that is required. The emergency housing hasn't just happened in the last couple of years, let's be honest. So we've allowed it to grow. So let's develop solutions that will hopefully have the best outcomes for our families. So we need other players in the field, not just Kainga Ora. We need iwi involved. We need the local councils involved. We need providers involved. But more importantly, we must fund so that we can be successful in providing good, warm, safe houses.
Okay, Ben, your response.
Yeah, thank you. As Merepeka outlined, this is a really topical issue here in Rotorua. So we have emergency accommodation, across the city, and we have far too many families and people living in emergency accommodation. And I think we can all recognise that it's not ideal, and we want people to be in their own home, in their own communities. But in terms of what we are doing to solve this issue, and I think on this issue, we really need to be solution focused. So we need more houses, and the government is delivering that here. So under National, last time they were in government, we lost 42 state homes in Rotorua in 9 years. This government has added or delivered over 270 social houses to Rotorua. We have another 500 coming up in the next few years. But it's not just the government, it's about partnering with local government. Building consents in Rotorua are double that of what they were in 2017. So the processes and the things that we have in place are actually working. We have record high levels of home building in Rotorua. We need to continue this to deliver homes for everyone.
Okay, Martin, next up.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, Act basically says we need 51,000 new homes every year for the next 5 years. This would allow for the current and future generations that the same opportunities that we had when we were young to get into home ownership. So in order to achieve this, Act is proposing a compulsory overhaul of the Resource Management Act, and it's going to be based on property rights, meaning you have the right to develop your property, and the only objections that will be raised from the people immediately adjoining your property. Other vested interests cannot get involved. Shake up the infrastructure funding, including sharing over $1 billion of GST revenue with the local councils based on their building consent activity. Allow builders to opt out of council consent regime so they can use more innovative techniques, materials, and improve affordability and quality, using a building insurance scheme as an alternative to the consents process, and use a code of practice and a resource consent to save time and money.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Kariana.
Yes, thank you for the question. New Zealand prioritises whānau and families at the forefront of all our policies. We recognise that thriving families are the foundation for a strong nation. New Zealand believes that every family should have the opportunity to own a home. I came from Murupara in the 80s, and all people really want is a home, a job, so they can feed their whānau and keep them warm. So we will look at reducing the required deposit for first home buyers down to 2.5%. And I've got a daughter who's about to buy a home, and she has to have 25% for her first home. That's just way too high for any whānau, especially those living in emergency accommodation. New Zealand will free up the housing market by cutting the red tape for landlords so that families can be put in houses that are presently just left vacant. High density building also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those answers there. Okay, so we'll switch over to hard-hitting question number 2. Central government increasingly communicates with citizens via email and text. Therefore, non-computer literate visit libraries for assistance. Changes to central government practices and legislation impact our local community, which councils are expected to deliver without funding. Do you believe central government should form a partnership with councils to deliver central government services? If so, how would these partnerships be funded? And Martin, you get to go first.
Yeah, well, obviously, central government and councils already work together in some areas here. This actually, to some extent, falls into the aged care category because they are the ones that are most often affected by these changes. It is quite funny. I suffer the same thing in education. We quite often get all our emails delivered, but I work in a workshop all day and I get told, where were you and why didn't you answer that email in a timely fashion? Mate, I don't have a computer at my lathe. Elderly folk have the same issue around, they get forced into using new technology before they're ready or even shown how to. This is where this slight joke comes around with most grandparents rely on their grandchildren to do all their emails for them. It shouldn't be like this. Before we introduce new technology, we should ensure that the community is ready to receive it. And by that, making courses available. We have the odd one in the Polytech system for training and giving people understanding of how this technology works, but then they have mobility issues and they can't get there. So we need to change the way we do new technology.
Okay, next up, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there's a number of ways that government not just needs to work with local government, but also, local community organisations, with iwi, with providers in the community. So I don't think it's necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution. Obviously, if the government is asking an organisation to do something on their behalf, then there should be funding available for that organisation to be able to fulfil what the government is wanting it to do. I think here in Rotorua, like we can look at Te Pokapū, which is a partnership between the council, Te Arawa, and the government to make sure that people have wraparound services and a place to go to find housing. So things like that. We need community social solutions, and we need government to be in our communities and available, because one of the biggest things that you see is people not being able to access the services that they need, and they need to be able to have local access.
Okay, Merepeka.
Well, the only reason central government would devolve services to local government is because they're not doing well at them. So, and the other thing too is no services should be devolved to local government without the funding going with it as well. But I would question, why go to local government? We've got local, if it's, and depending of course what it is that central government wants to devolve, but what about our local providers, service providers, particularly in the social welfare space? They know their communities well, they can get a foot in the door, that they live in the community, so they have a vested interest in ensuring that their service is successful. They can be well monitored. So I wouldn't go and think that you're going to get great service from local authorities. No, I think go to people who know their community well, and that's the local providers, and fund them adequately to be successful.
Okay, Kariana.
Yeah, well, in regards to central government decisions, I believe if I was your candidate, I will be pushing as much as possible to keep local assets and decisions in local people's hearts and hands. That's a priority for me. We all love our city, and because we all pay rates, we should be the deciders of what our city should look like, not central government. So working together for the good of our city and our country. So that's where I am with that. Thank you.
And thank you for those answers there. Very, very helpful. And yes, the government may take credit for the fact my 95-year-old grandmother did do her census online, but you're looking at the person who sat there and filled it out for her. But she did say one good thing. It took 20 minutes, not 2 hours on the pen and paper version. So she's very pleased the online option was available, and for her, it sped it up a hell of a lot. One thing I also noticed was she still put down her religion as Presbyterian, and I don't remember seeing her set foot in a church. So that might be something quite useful about stats about who actually still puts their religious affiliation, even that they might seem to be a bit of a secular family. Okay, now here's the exciting part, and this is the part I love about every single show, is what is the first private, no, they don't call them that anymore, members bill that the candidates would put into the biscuit tin if they were elected. Now, we're going to give them 2 minutes this time to sit there and get it, because we want to get them to explain a bit the nooks and crannies of what's behind the bill, that sort of thing there, and how they'll get, and what their plans can also be to get cross-party support, because private members' bills aren't government bills, so they do require a bit of a different mechanism to get forward. You only get one members' day every sitting fortnight, and well, we don't, and typically every 3 weeks there's a recess period, so it could take a bit of a while to get a private members' bill through Parliament, but they tend to do some very remarkable things. And Meripeka, you get to go up first.
Well, I would like to, my private members bill would be looking at the introduction of the 4-year term for central government. Now, I know there's been quite a bit of discussion already on that by current government and certainly by local government. And I suspect that it may well see the light of day, and they'll look first at local government. I think this is something that central government should be looking at. 3 years is not long enough, because we think in New Zealand, our government thinks short term. They always worry about retaining power, getting into power, and they don't do the work that they should be doing to make sure that their policies are implemented for the benefit of our communities. Some of the projects, and particularly infrastructure projects, are significant. They are large. They require good relationships with funders, good relationships with landowners, good relationships with the community as well. And that does take time. So I would like to think that a 4-year term will allow all of that to take place, so that you do know that what you're going to get is a reflection of what the community wants. 3 years is short, 2 years, yes, and then suddenly you're into election mode again. So we do have to take the long-term approach. We do have to think about, will we get a good outcome from, from this project if we speed it up, rather than saying, let's look at the whole implications. And I believe that a 4-year term in government will give some good thinking. You'll be able to canvass widely, look at the pros and cons, and know at the end of the day, you're going to put in place something that would benefit the whole of this country. Stop the short-term thinking, stop the ambulance in the bottom of the cliff, which successive governments are known for.
And you can definitely tell Meripeka is a former councillor with that way of thinking, because I understand the same things on that one. Kariana, what will be your first members bill?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether this will be my first members bill as such, but a lot of people that I'm connected to in the community were horrified. I'd be more interested in repealing a bill that's in there presently that was passed in 2020, just before lockdown, which was the most extreme abortion bill passed in New Zealand, in the world, one of the most extreme in the world, where you could have an abortion up to full term, and furthering that babies that are born if they are born alive, are left to die. So my first commitment would be to those people and to the 26,000 people, 26,000 people who sent in submission, would be actually to repeal that left to die bill and then revisit the abortion bill where there's tighter measures around its what would I say? Around its permissions. Yeah, so that's where I will be. So it's not so much a private member's bill, but you're just repealing that. Thanks.
Can I ask, how many abortions happen post 20 weeks? Do you know?
Yeah, well, it has increased since 2020. I was just reading some stats. I'm not sure exactly, but I guess the point is still made at 24 weeks. You know, babies are born alive, and to be left to die on a cold slate without any reprieve or painkillers is actually is inhumane, and it's even animals get better treatment than our preborn babies. So kia ora.
So do we have a case of this in New Zealand?
Yes, absolutely we do. Yeah, and I've heard of them personally. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'd love to know what the doctors who signed that one off then. Yeah.
It's grievous.
Yeah. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of things here, and one of them is actually already happened. But I'm going to speak to how good it is, because it would have been one of a member's bill that I would have put in. So the government, and I think all the parties actually supported this, which is really nice, was just passed the Integrity Sport and Recreation Act, which sets up an independent integrity sport unit in New Zealand as a Crown entity. I'm someone who I've competed in 3 Olympics. I've been involved in the sport and integrity space for a really long time, and we've seen a number of well-being and welfare issues in sport in New Zealand in the last few years, and it's just not good enough. And sport should be for good. It should be for people to, realize their dreams. And so by having this independent agency, hopefully we can deal with things before they become a problem. So I was involved in that in its early conception, and so very happy to see that get across the line and be supported by all the parties. In terms of things that haven't happened, I think 16-year-olds getting the vote, 4-year parliamentary terms, and why not put one out there, having a referendum on New Zealand becoming a republic.
Okay. Martin, what will be your first member's bill you'd put into the biscuit tin?
I don't actually have a member's bill in mind. I'm standing for Rotorua to get New Zealand, to give New Zealanders an opportunity for real change, and that is fixing our health issues, fixing the health system, fixing the education system, getting infrastructure up and going, and that's what I'll be focused on if I get into Parliament.
Okay, that's very short, sharp, sweet, and well, fingers crossed something does happen there on a member's bill. So we've got a little bit of spare time. So I'd like to find out from these candidates, what is the best coffee shop in the Rotorua Electorate, considering I'm a barista by trade, so, including that ghastly corporate multinational establishment outside the front door, BP, did employ me for 3.5 years. However, I've got to admit, I learnt my barista skills before then. So what is the best coffee establishment that you'd recommend for your voters? Who would like to kick it off?
I would, actually. I live in the Springfield area and on Devon Street. I think the best coffee is made by this little coffee called Grounded Cafe. Anybody been there? Yep. And they also own the coffee shop down by the lakefront, so you can get it from 2 places. Grounded.
Ben?
Yeah, and if you're not going to Grounded, there's some wonderful coffee in Rotorua, and I think this is, I love my coffee, and it's always normally the first thing I do when I go to a new place is find the best coffee. So I work right next to Interval Cafe, and I think their coffee in town is fantastic. On the weekend, you might find me at Zippy's, but if you're out east side here, Eastwood is also really good, and it's right next to the forest. So there's some great coffee, but get to Interval.
Medipeka.
Yes, well, there are some great coffee places, but I have to be honest, I prefer a glass of wine. And I'm a club member of the Rotorua Citizens Club. So you'll often find me there enjoying a glass of wine. Kia ora.
So which New Zealand variety do you like drinking?
Actually, I prefer the Marlborough wine. Yes, always. Thank
You
you.
and my former landlady have something in common. Martin.
Yeah, I travel around quite a bit. So at the moment, most of my coffees are at Ambrosia. I don't get far apart away from that. That's where I meet all my fellow supporters. And I'll give a plug for Te Puke too, where I stop there at Lumberjacks. I've just put one in, and so far the coffee there has been very good.
Okay, so I've got a few coffee shops to check out for my next 2 days in the Lakes Rotorua district area. Okay, so we've got some very good quality answers. I found out some good coffee shops I've got to try along with the rest of our crew here before we go. Now, can I thank the candidates for coming tonight and presenting presenting their views and their answers on why they should become the next local MP for the Rotorua Electorate. Can we also thank now? Name blanks. I have many different local hosts. Te Kahukura for joining us tonight as being local question host. And thank you, Metapeka, for finding her at very, trying to find local co-hosts are a bit of a mission when you are in a bit of a Wellington bubble, but I'm glad I've been broken out of it and you meet some fantastic people. And as usual, we'd like to thank Alex and Nick who are in studio here, Jill who has done a hell of a lot of candidate liaison work today, and can I also thank Stacey who is our remote editor for tonight and our producer for making this show happen. For those who are wondering what's happened to Waitariki Electorate show tonight, we have parked it for the meantime in respects to Rawiri Waititi's mother's death, and along with other I think Tony, she also has a tangi to go to as well. It just seems to be going through the area. We will get to the candidates to sort out a remote show at a future date so that you as the voters know where they stand on things, and I'm looking forward to doing the remote show. Or Alex, I'm not sure who's we might have it, or we might get Stacey to do it. I mean, she does a brilliant job. No, she told me in my ear she's not going to do it, but that's all right. We'll find that, and we'll be having tomorrow. We'll be having our East Coast Electorate show remote. Oh, have I not done closing statements on the candidates? Oh, gee. So we're doing our thank you. Thank you, Stacey, for sitting there doing that. Well, we'll promote the East Coast show for tomorrow. So if you want to join us, you can watch us online on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, or it's in the ballot.nz where we can watch the East Coast Electorate candidates. So we're doing a remote only show because half the candidates in Gisborne, half the candidates are in Whakatane. It's a bit of a very big electorate. So we've settled for remote working between the candidates. And then we'll be heading off to Tauranga for both Bay of Plenty and Tauranga Electorate for Friday, and before we head over the Kaimaias to Hamilton. But let's get to our candidates for their closing statements, the best part, after being thanked on why they should get the vote for the next 3 years. I know next time I should read the production schedule. Martin, you can kick off with your 60 seconds on why the Rotorua voters should get give you their electorate vote.
Yeah, I'm Martin Roseboom. I'm the ACT candidate, and I'm actually campaigning for the party vote for the Rotorua Electorate. ACT is campaigning for reducing crime, reducing cost of living, having an open discussion on the co-governance. My personal one is education. Our declining state of education in this country is appalling. We are not preparing our young people for the future, and our health system. Our aged care system is a mess. We don't have enough of anyone to look after our older people. And to be fair, our aging population is not a surprise to anybody. They didn't sneak up on us. They've been growing old their whole life. We had the baby boomers at the beginning. They've been called the boomers their whole life. So when they arrived at old age, we should have been ready as a country to receive them and treat them with dignity and respect in their older years and give them all the care that they need. Many of them struggle with in-home care, in-home support, and also care with palliative care later in their life, and we need to do something about this. I'm Martin Roseboom, standing for ACT. Please party vote ACT.
Okay, Ben.
I'm Ben Sanford, I'm the Labour candidate for Rotorua, and I'm asking for your vote, both as the electorate candidate and your party vote. As you might have noticed tonight, we've got an MP here in Rotorua who's been the MP for 15 years. He's not here tonight. He is going to be in Parliament whether you like it or not. And so it's really important that you vote strategically. So I'm asking for your candidate vote. We need a strong voice in Parliament. We need someone that cares about the community, that's involved in the community, and I give you that background. You know, I'm a strong advocate. I love living here. I want to represent this community. I think there's a huge amount of potential here, and so I'm asking you to, you know, please consider to vote for me so I can represent you in Parliament, and that we can have 2 MPs in Parliament for Rotorua, and I will be one of those, and I'll be exceptionally proud to represent you there. But also please vote for Labour. There's a lot of work that we've got to do. We've got to be solution focused and get things done.
Kariana.
Kia ora. Thank you for coming this evening and for tuning in online. Why should you vote for me as your candidate, Kariana Black-Burko, for not the New Nation, the
New Zealand?
New Zealand Party. Apologies, it's been a long night. Yeah, well, we have, out of all the minor parties, we're the only one with 2 former MPs. The party leader behind us, who is Honourable Alfred Ngaro, who's spent 9 years in Parliament as a national MP, and also United Future former MP Paul Adams. So our priorities are whānau, is family first, and so if any organisation wants to make decisions for our tamariki mokopuna, they'll have to get through me, because that's where my heart is. And yeah, so 2 votes, Kariana Black for Rotorua, and vote party vote, New Zealand in the land. Thank you.
And Merepeka.
This election is so important. We have strong winds ahead of us. We have a number of years of hard graft. So we need to understand that everybody has to make a contribution to the future of Aotearoa. We have become a land of the haves and the have-nots. That's not good enough. We really need to make sure that everybody feels valued in Aotearoa. Now, we're probably likely to do as we've always done, vote in the same old way. And if you do that, nothing will change. And this is definitely a time for New Zealand to understand what's at stake if nothing changes. We've got young people that need to know that they are stunning, they are loved, they are beautiful, and they are valued. This is their country, this is their future. We've got to have the leadership that really understands community. Otherwise, New Zealand, well, you can just park it up. Our country should be going from good to great. You can do something about that. My name is Merepeka Raukawa-Tate. I'm for Pāti Māori as a Member of Parliament and for the vote. Kia ora.
And let's give a round of applause for everyone for coming tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. for East Coast Electorate Remote Show. See you then. Good night.